There was another Davos moment that really caught our attention, this one flagged by a friend of the show, Ken Klippenstein. So Senator Chris Coons is probably Joe Biden's closest ally in the Senate. So when he speaks, it's really important to listen to what he had to say. Now, we've been covering here the fact that there is some angst on the European side about the Inflation Reduction Act. They're concerned about the incentives contained therein, that some of their industry around green energy may come to our shores. So there's been some friction in the relationship. So in that context, Senator Chris Coons gets asked about nearshoring and friendshoring and where does this terrifying protectionism all end. Let's take a listen to what he has to say.
How far will the U.S. go in friendshoring, making sure that things goes to Mexico and countries that you're allied with? Do you see the point of the IMF managing director, and how will the U.S. balance this to make sure that we also will have growth in the years to come? And this will be a very shallow recession, if a recession at all.
Look, thank you for your comments and the opportunity. I do think that American leaders and business leaders in particular recognize that the severe disruptions of the pandemic and some of the challenges of the reach and the scope of globalization that have caused a backlash in many of our countries, a populist backlash, certainly in the United States, need to be addressed. One of the ways to deal with some of our challenges in terms of the hemisphere and migration also is to do some nearshoring to improve the job opportunities in Central America, for example. But I don't think it will be as robust as potentially projected. I do think that we will continue to have an open economy, to be committed to free trade, and to see the robust value that globalization has brought to the world as well as to many of our people.
So when they say free trade, what they're talking about is the, Trans-Pacific Partnership, NAFTA, which was devastating to a whole swath of the country. They're talking about things like PNTR with China, opening up normalized trade relations with China, which has been devastating for blue-collar workers. It's been devastating for our industrial base. It has made it so our supply chains, which was manifested incredibly clearly during COVID and continuing to this day, are incredibly fragile and dependent on a lot of other countries, but China in particular. And effectively what Coons is saying here is like, we had to do a little bit of this to sort of placate the people, but we're still really committed to the old way of doing things that lines the pockets of billionaires and a sort of global elite class at the expense of blue-collar workers.
The irony of it is that Europe has one of the most protectionist economies in the world. They just have the European Union. They're pissed that they don't get to have protectionism and that they don't get to ship their car parts here and that we don't put a tariff on them, or that we require our stuff to be American-made while their stuff is European-made and European-owned, especially financially. The whole thing is a total farce. And I cannot stand Germany's entire economy is a protectionist hellhole for anybody who wants to do business outside of the world. That's why they are one of the largest, I believe, the largest economy in all of Europe, because they have all of these rules and regulations that pile up, with the hand of Brussels. This is part of the reason why Britain wanted to leave the EU in the first place. The whole point is that when you look at it, they want protectionism for themselves and free trade for us. And that has been the case with China, with the European Union, with Japan, with India, with Brazil. I mean, almost every other major trading partner that we have has an incredibly closed off, homogenous system. And then they come here and they're like, no, they expect to be able to just do business completely the way that they want and then ship all the profits back home while making sure that people here lose their jobs. It's completely ridiculous. And it's an ideology, that the Chris Coons and all of them have set from the top. I hope it gets rejected. I wish stuff like this was more at the political conversation like it was a couple of years ago. I feel like we've almost forgotten about it.
Yeah, I mean, this was really core to the rise of Trump. I mean, this was one of the things, there was an over attempt by the media to say Trump and Bernie Sanders are the same. But on some of these issues at that time, they were singing a lot of the same tune, and they were right.
Yes.
They were, and they have never been more vindicated in that messaging than right now. Again, we just lived through the terrifying experience of, oh, we're facing a pandemic and we literally don't make any of our own PPE. Oh, where are all of our pharmaceuticals manufactured? Oh, we can't even get baby formula on the shelves. I mean, the amount of fragility and vulnerability that we discovered exists in our supply chain because exactly this thinking, not to mention, I mean, guys, we continue to have increases in overdoses and deaths of despair, continued fallout from the way that we decimated the industrial base and the working class of this country in favor of growth. Well, growth for who? To benefit who? That's the question they never, ever answered. They never wanted to answer because, of course, it's their political donors who benefited from this quote-unquote free trade regime for so many years. So, this is why it's always important to pay close attention to what elites at Davos are saying to each other, because they sort of forget that the rest of the world can hear them.
That's a good point.
And it's a little bit of a mask-off moment. So this is why I always track these things really closely and really appreciate Ken also watching this and paying attention to it, because there was a thought that, you know what, things might really be changing. There may really be a new consensus emerging in Washington and a different approach to, supply chains and rebuilding our industrial base and getting some of this fragility out of our system. And the Inflation Reduction Act seemed like, okay, and we had the CHIPS Act, right? Maybe this is a new era of industrial policy. And at least according to Senator Chris Coons, who again is the top ally of Joe Biden in the Senate, this was all just, a little bit of a ruse, a little bit of a sop to the populace, and we're going to go back to doing exactly what we were doing before.
Yeah, very unfortunate.
Hey guys, ready or not, 2024 is fully upon us now, and Saagar and I have been brainstorming ways that we can really up our game for this critical election.
Yeah, we rely on our premium subs to expand our coverage, to add staff, to upgrade the studio. We just want to give you the best independent coverage of this election, which is possible. So if you can help us out, become a premium subscriber today, breakingpoints.com, or the link is down here in the description video. It really means the world to us, and if you like what we're all about, this is the best possible way to keep us 100% independent, working only for you.